Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Calcio. Thank you for joining me for Dharma Sunday. Tonight's practice will consist of a 15-minute guided meditation, followed by a reading from the Lotus Sutra, a Dharma talk, and then a Q&A. These teachings are offered free of charge, but if you'd like to make a contribution, information for PayPal is in the description for this talk. And if you'd like to do a deep dive into Buddhist training, check out my book, Perfectly Ordinary Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life. There's a link to a sample chapter also in the description for this talk. So, as we get ready for the guided meditation portion of the practice, please find a comfortable position. It could be sitting on the floor, on a cushion, in a chair. The only rule is you need to be comfortable. You need to be in a position that you can hold for 15 minutes without moving. I'll give you a moment to get there. Make sure your back is nice and long. Raise the chin ever so slightly. Not so much that you're looking up, just enough there the windpipe is clear. If you'd like to do a more traditional posture, you can place your left hand in your lap, open palm. Then place your right hand over your left, open palm. In Buddhism, we say that wisdom holds compassion, and traditionally, Manjushri, who is the Bodhisattva of wisdom, is on the left side of Buddha. Kannan, who's the Bodhisattva of compassion, is on the right side. So left holds the right. I'll keep time, so you don't need to worry about that. If you want to keep your eyes closed, you're welcome to do that. If not, keep them half closed, pointed downwards at a 45-degree angle to avoid distractions. We're going to start by focusing on the breath, breathing in and out through the nose. In the West, we think our mind and body are separate, but in Buddhism, we're taught that they're one. We're taught that we can control the body through the breath, and by controlling the body, we control the mind. So this in and out breath through the nose signals to our body that we're calm, that we can relax, and that in turn causes our mind to relax. So we're just going to breathe, and as we do that, poke out the belly button on every inhale. Let it relax on every exhale. This lets the diaphragm drop into the stomach cavity, allowing us to get a full lung full of air. Once again, signaling that we're safe, that we have permission to just do nothing for a while. And we don't try to clear the mind. Our minds wander. We're human beings. But as our minds wander away from the meditation, we simply say hello to our thoughts and bring our focus back to the physical sensations of the breath. Our stomach expanding and contracting, the feeling of air in our throat. We're going to do this for 2 minutes. We're just going to breathe. Wonderful. Keep breathing. Now we're going to start the visualization for this evening. Now that we've created a foundation with our breath, and we're going to visualize our spiritual energy sitting in our hara, the space behind our belly button. Traditionally in Buddhism, this is where enlightenment is said to reside. And this fiery ball of energy is our favorite color. If we like blue, the hara is blue. If we like green, the hara is green. With every inhale, still doing that meditative breath we started in the beginning, we'll bring air into our lungs. With every exhale, we'll blow on that energy, that spiritual fire, like we would a campfire, making it bigger and brighter with every breath. And we're going to do this for 2 minutes. I'll keep time, so you don't need to worry about that. We're just going to breathe and feed our spiritual power. If our mind wanders, that's okay. We say hello to our thoughts and bring our focus back to the breathing. Great work. Now we're going to extend the visualization, sending an energy channel down from our hara all the way to the center of the earth. And when we get there, we find an energy identical to ours. Buddha touched the earth in order to realize his own enlightenment. And we're going to do the same. With every inhale, we'll pull energy up from the center of the earth, that healing spiritual force. And with every exhale, we'll blow on it, building up that spiritual power in our belly. So we're feeding ourselves with the energy of the earth, and then we're magnifying that energy with our breath. Taking time to notice that even as the earth feeds us, it's never depleted. The more healing it gives, the more it has to give. And we'll do this for about 2 minutes. Pulling energy into ourselves with our breath, with the inhale, and magnifying that energy with the exhale. If our mind wanders, that's okay. We say hello to our thoughts. And we come back to the breath and the visualization. I'll keep time. No need to worry about that. Good work. Now we'll move to this third part of the visualization, continuing to breathe, continuing to pull energy up from the earth. We're going to send another channel of energy up from our hara in our belly all the way up past our solar plexus, past our throat, up our spine to the top of our head. So we have one energy channel going from our belly down to the center of the earth. The other goes from our belly to the top of our head. And now we're just going to drench ourselves with all that healing energy, all that spiritual power we've been accumulating. We breathe in, we pull energy up from the earth into our hara. We breathe out through the nose and we expel that energy up out the top of our head like a volcano. And it just rains down, covering every inch of us. Healing our emotional hurts, healing our physical hurts, healing ourselves with spiritual power. We breathe in, we pull energy into ourselves. We breathe out, we expel it out the top of our heads like a volcano. And if our mind wanders, that's okay. We just say hello to our thoughts and bring our focus back to the breathing and to the visualization. We'll do this for about 1.5 minutes. I'll keep time. No need to worry about that. We're just going to breathe. Great work. All done so good, sitting so still and so quiet. Building up your spiritual power. But now it's time to bring our meditation to a close. So we'll slowly, gently start to put less energy out the top of our heads. The flow gets smaller and smaller until it only reaches our nose. Then it only reaches our throat. Then it only reaches our solar plexus. Until finally the energy doesn't move past our belly, past the seat of our spiritual power. And then slowly, gently, we close off the energy channel, connecting us to the earth. Maybe we do a slight mental bow, saying thank you for the healing and the teaching we received. We draw our energy up into ourselves, until finally there's only the hara, only the energy in the seat of our spiritual power, the space behind our belly button. We're just going to breathe for about 30 seconds. Slowly coming back into our bodies, we lean our head to the left, then to the right, alternating, focusing on the physical movement. And we come back to center. And if our eyes are closed, when we're ready, and only when we're ready, we open them. I'll give you another 30 seconds to do that. And then we'll start the reading for this evening. Wonderful. Thank you for doing that with me. Now that we've grounded ourselves, prepared our minds and our bodies to receive the teachings of the Buddha, we'll start tonight's reading. It comes from the Lotus Sutra. We'll do about 4 more weeks of the Lotus Sutra, and then we'll move on to the Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana Sutra, which is also one of my favorites. And tonight we'll be reading from the BDK English Tripitaka version, or translation rather, of the Lotus Sutra. It's not necessary to have a copy of the sutra, but it can be helpful if you want to read along. Tonight's reading comes from page 79. The chapter is called Willing Acceptance. And in this parable, it's the parable of a wayward son and his wealthy father. The son wanders away, and this father, who's poor at the time, gains wealth in the city, and then he has to find his son and then convince his son to stay with him and take over the family business, so to speak. So I'll read that, and then we'll have a discussion about it. O Bhagavat, we now wish to give an illustration to clarify what we mean. Suppose there were a man who, when he was still a child, left his father and ran away. Living in another region for a long time, he passed the age of 10, 20, even 50 years. The older he got, the more impoverished he became. He went searching everywhere for food and clothing, and while he was wandering about, he started back by chance in the direction of his native country. From the first, the father had looked for his son, but in vain. In the meantime, he had stayed in the city and become extremely wealthy, and now possessed uncountable treasures. The father's storehouses were all filled to overflowing with gold, silver, lapis, lazuli, coral, amber, crystal, and other such things. He had many servants, subordinates, and clerks, as well as innumerable elephants, horses, carriages, cows, and sheep. He profited through lending, and his trade with other countries was also great. Then the impoverished son, after wandering through many villages from one country and city to another, finally reached the city where his father lived. Although the father had constantly thought about the son from whom he had been separated for over 50 years, he nevertheless had spoken to no one about it. He brooded and grieved in his heart, thinking to himself, I have become old and feeble. And although I have many treasures and storehouses filled with gold, silver, and precious jewels, I have no son. When I die, my treasures will be scattered and lost for lack of someone to whom to entrust them. It was for this reason that he was always thinking anxiously about his son. He also thought, if I could get my son back and leave my fortune to him, I would be relieved and happy and without further worry. O Bhagavat, at that time, the impoverished son, who had been wandering about taking odd jobs, was by chance finally reached his father's house. Standing at the side of the gate, he saw his father in the distance, sitting on the lion seat with his feet propped up on a jeweled stool. respectfully surrounded by many Brahmins, Sratrivas, and householders. His body was adorned with pearl necklaces worth thousands of myriads. He was attended on both sides by clerks and servants holding whisker fans. Above was a jeweled canopy with various hanging flowered banners. Perfume was sprinkled on the ground, which was strewn with a variety of beautiful flowers. There were rows of precious objects, and people were coming and going, buying and selling with various trappings such as these. The father appeared very majestic indeed. The impoverished son, seeing his father wielding such great power, became terrified and regretted that he had ever come to that place. He thought to himself, he must be a king or of a similar rank. This is not a place where I can obtain things as a hired worker. It would certainly be better for me to go to a poor village, a place where I can use my ability and easily obtain clothing and food. If I stay here for very long, I will be seized and put to forced labor. Thinking this, he quickly fled away. At that time, the wealthy man sitting on the lion's seat realized that he had seen his son and became extremely happy. He then thought, now there is someone to whom I can leave my fortune and treasures. I have been constantly thinking about my son, but had no way to meet him, and now suddenly he has come. This is exactly what I wanted. Although I am old, I still yearn for him. The man immediately dispatched his attendants to chase his son and bring him back. Then the attendants quickly ran and overtook him. The impoverished son was frightened and cried out in fear, I did nothing wrong. Why are you seizing me? The attendants grabbed him more firmly and forced him to return. Then the impoverished son thought, they had seized me even though I have done nothing wrong. I shall certainly be killed. He was so terrified that he collapsed unconscious on the ground. His father, seeing this from a distance, told the attendants, I don't need him. Don't force him to come. Pour cold water on his face and bring him to consciousness. Don't say anything more to him. What was the reason for this? The father knew that his son was of lowly aspiration, that his own wealth and position would cause him problems. Although the father knew without doubt that this man was his son, he used skillful means and did not say to others, this is my son. The attendant then said to the son, you are free to go wherever you wish. Then the impoverished son, happy because he had never felt such relief, stood up and went to a poor village to seek for food and clothing. At that time, wanting to get his son back, the wealthy man employed skillful means and secretly dispatched 2 attendants of wretched and humble appearance. He said to them, approach the impoverished fellow and gently tell him that there is a place for him to work where he will be paid double. If he gives his assent, then bring him back to work. If he asks you what kind of work there is for him, tell him that he will be employed to sweep dung and that both of you will work with him. Then the attendants immediately went in search of the impoverished son. When they found him, they told him this. At that time, he took his pay and immediately went to work sweeping dung. The father, seeing his son, felt pity and wondered what to do. Then one day, while looking through the window, he saw his son in the distance, appearing emaciated and wretched, soiled with dung and dirt. The father took off his necklaces, fine garments, and ornaments, and put on a torn, filthy cloth, covering himself with dirt and taking a dung sweeper in his right hand. He made himself look fearsome. He said to his workers, work hard and don't be lazy. Through this kind of skillful means, he was able to approach his son. He spoke to him further. I want you to always work here. Don't go anywhere else, and I will pay you more. There will be no difficulty in getting the things you need, like utensils, rice, noodles, salt, and vinegar. I also have an old servant. If you need him, I'll give him to you. Be at ease. I am just like your father, so don't worry about anything. Why am I doing this? Because I am old and you are still young. Whenever you work, you are never lazy or sullen and never complain. I never see in you the bad qualities the other workers have. From now on, you will be just like my own son. Then the wealthy man immediately addressed him as his child. At that time, even though the impoverished son rejoiced at being treated this way, he nevertheless still considered himself a humble employee. For this reason, his father let him continue to sweep dung for 20 years. At the end of this period of time, each had come to trust the other. Even though the son had free access to his father's house, he still lived in the same place as before. O Bhagavat! One day the wealthy man became ill and knew he was going to die before long. He said to the impoverished son, "This is what I have been thinking, and I want you to understand my intentions. I now have plenty of gold, silver, and precious treasures filling my storehouses. Get to know exactly how much is being taken in and out of them. Why do I want you to do this? Because you and I are one and the same. Take good care of our fortune and don't let it be lost." Then the impoverished son obeyed his instructions. Although he learned everything about the gold, silver, precious treasure, and the storehouses, he never wanted to take even the least amount. Nevertheless, he still lived in the same place as before and was still not able to get rid of his feeling of inferiority. After a short time had passed, the father knew that his son's mind had become composed, and that his will had increased, and that he was ashamed of his former feelings. When the father was just on the verge of death, he ordered his son to meet the king, ministers, satriyas, householders, and relatives who had already assembled there. The father then declared, "This is my son, my own progeny. When we were in a certain city, he left me and fled. He wandered around for more than 50 years undergoing hardships. His original name is such and such, and my name is such and such. Long ago, when I was in that city, I worried and searched for him. At last and unexpectedly, I met up with him. This is my true son, and I am his true father. All of the fortune I now possess belongs to my son. He already knows about our finances. O Bhagavat!" At that time, the impoverished son, hearing what his father said, became extremely happy at having obtained such an unprecedented experience. Then he thought, "I never even considered receiving this. Nevertheless, this treasure house has come into my possession, though unsought and unawaited. O Bhagavat, this very wealthy man is the Tathagata, and all of us are the heirs of the Buddha. The Tathagata has always said that we are his children. Because of the triple sufferings, O Bhagavat, we experience pain, were confused, ignorant, and attached to inferior teachings in life after life. Today, the Bhagavat has made us think about getting rid of the dung of fallacies regarding the reality of the world, and that in this respect, we diligently strove to attain the nirvana only as one seeking a salary for a single day's labor. We had already attained it and were extremely happy and satisfied with it. We said to ourselves, because we have made diligent efforts to comprehend the Buddha's teachings, we have attained a great deal. But the Bhagavat had formerly perceived that we were attached to desires and content with lowly aspirations. While letting us be so, he did not explain that we were to have a portion of the treasure house of the Tathagata's wisdom and insight. Through the power of skillful means, the Bhagavat has taught the wisdom of the Tathagatas. Although we had attained nirvana from the Buddha as our salary for one day's labor, we thought we had attained much and did not seek the Mahayana. Furthermore, we have manifested and explained the wisdom of the Tathagata for the Bodhisattvas, but we ourselves had no aspirations regarding it. Why is this? The Buddha, knowing that we were content with lowly aspirations, taught us according to what is appropriate through the power of skillful means. But we did not know that we really were the heirs of the Buddha. So, in this reading, just to surmise it, essentially we have a prodigal son. He and his father are living in the city. They're poor. The son, probably not wanting to be poor any longer, when he's young, he runs off. And he's gone for many, many years. Meanwhile, the father stays in the city. He gains a great deal of wealth. But when his son comes back and sees how wealthy and well-off his father is, he's scared. He thinks he's going to be arrested, that he's going to be forced to do work he doesn't want to do, so he runs away. So the father needs to use skillful means to bring his prodigal son back to him and slowly over time reveal who the son really is. And I think we can all understand why this is important. If you're a child, let's say you're 18 years old and you inherit $1 million, it's probably not going to go well because you're 18. You don't know anything, right? You have to learn the family business. You have to learn how money works, how to earn it, what it's like to not have it. And then once you understand what your treasure is, now you can care for it. Now you're ready to take over the family business. Well, in Buddhism, Buddhist practice is the family business. And the Buddha is, metaphorically speaking, our father. So what this has to do with tonight's talk is that I, over time, am constantly telling you that you're a Buddha, that you're an enlightened being. But this begs the question, obviously, if we're already enlightened, if we're already Buddhas, why do we need to practice the Dharma? You hear this a lot in New Age circles. We have everything we need. We don't need to do anything. There's no use for Buddhist practice. In fact, you'll hear some Zen teachers say Buddhism is pointless. And to an extent, they're right. You are already a Buddha. You're already an enlightened being. But you have to learn about your enlightenment, just like the son in the story had to learn about his wealth. So when I tell you you're a Buddha, that essentially lays the groundwork for our practice. We know we're Buddhas intellectually, and now we have to learn it experientially, spiritually. That's what Buddhism is for. To understand how this works, we need to understand the Trikaya, which is the three bodies of Buddha. There's the Dharmakaya, which is the wisdom body of Buddha. There is the Sambhogakaya, which is the joy body of Buddha. And then there's the Nirmanakaya, which is the physical body of Buddha. That's us. We are physical Buddhas. And because we're physical, like the wayward son, we are given to unskillful means, greed, anger, ignorance. And the father is represented by the Dharmakaya, the wisdom body, which is what we come from. So we leave the wisdom body of Buddha out of our ignorance, and then we have to return to it. Just like the son had to go home to his father. This is why I always say we're not attaining anything when we practice Buddhism. We're just remembering who we really are. Just like the son had to remember who his father was. And just like there are three aspects to the larger body of Buddha, the Trikaya, there are three aspects to being a Nirmanakaya, or a physical Buddha. You can also say there are three aspects to enlightenment. There's the physical being of Buddha. There's a state of being. I'm a Buddha, you're a Buddha. We are enlightened. Then there's the actualization or the realization of our Buddha nature. And this is practicing Buddhism in daily life. This is the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Six Perfections, the Four Brahma Viharas, the actualization of our Buddhahood. And finally, there's the experiencing of Buddha nature. And of the three forms of enlightenment, of the three forms of Buddhahood, the experience of enlightenment is probably the least important, which is ironic because that's the part that everyone talks about. That's the selling point everyone wants to get. That's the story of the monk floating off the cushion, of the teacher who becomes one with everything. My mind went back to the beginning of the universe and I saw the creation of space and time. Those enlightenment experiences are fun and they're interesting, but generally speaking, at least in the Zen tradition, if you tell your teacher about them, they'll listen respectfully and they'll nod, and then they'll just tell you to go sit on your cushion again. Because the danger is if we get caught up in the experiencing of enlightenment, the experiencing of our Buddha nature, is that we ignore the other parts of Buddhahood. We ignore the actualization of Buddhahood. We ignore the state of being of Buddhahood. And we can see real-world examples of this. A simple Google search will show lots of spiritual teachers who were very deeply realized. I have no doubt that they had some sort of spiritual experience, but they didn't know how to actualize their Buddha nature. They didn't see other people as Buddhas. So even though they were a spiritual teacher, they were also abusive. And maybe they physically assaulted students, maybe they stole money, because they had the experience, but they didn't have the other portions. That's why I say it's the least important. Not to say it's bad or that we shouldn't talk about these experiences if we have them, just that they're a small piece of the puzzle. On the flip side, I'm sure we all know someone who's very kind and very considerate. Maybe they're not even Buddhist, but they live by the precepts. They use right speech, so they're fun to talk to. They use right action, so they don't harm themselves or others. They practice right livelihood, so they earn money in a way that's beneficial for themselves and for the world. And they don't have the cool enlightenment experience. They haven't seen into Buddha nature, but they are actualizing their Buddhahood. And we want to be around them. We enjoy being around them. That's why in my own teachings, I don't talk about the enlightenment experiences very much. They're there, they're interesting, I guess, but really the understanding the state of being that we are Buddha, that's what's important. The actualization of our Buddha nature, that's what's important. And that's why we practice the Dharma. Going back to the story, the father couldn't simply tell his son that he was wealthy. Again, an 18-year-old with $1 million is going to end badly. The son saw his father's wealth and he got scared. He ran away. And I'm sure that happens sometimes with you guys when I say that you're Buddha, when I say that you're enlightened. There's a part of you that draws back. And that's perfectly natural and normal. I had those same experiences. But I keep reminding you of it just because, like I said, it lays a foundation for the practice. And initially, this is going to be a step of faith. I don't feel enlightened. I don't feel like Buddha, but I'm going to trust the practice that's lasted for 2,600 years. And as we trust the practice, just like the son did, he started off at the bottom, sweeping dung. And then once he had done that for a long time, then he was trusted with the business because his mind had changed. He was more composed. The father knew he wasn't ready to handle the gold and the jewels and the coral early on. So he had him sweep dung first. Then once he mastered that, then he went on to handling the business. And then once he mastered that, once the father realized his mind was composed, then he told the son and everyone else, this is my true son. He is my heir. All of my riches and wealth go to him. And the Buddha, as our father, does exactly the same thing. We start off sweeping the floor of the temple, washing the dishes, making offerings to the monastics. We sit in meditation on the cushion. Right? We're sweeping dung. Everyone has to do it. And then what happens? And then we start studying the sutras and we do chanting and prostration. We learn more about the family business. We learn the rituals and how they work. Our minds become more skillful, more composed. We have the state of being down. Now we're learning to actualize our Buddha nature. And then maybe during that course of events, we have some of those experiences of enlightenment, those experiences of Buddhahood that we talked about earlier. But in the same way that the son had to be prepared mentally before he was ready for those experiences, we had to be prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, so that we don't go off the deep end once we realize, oh, I really am one with everything. Oh, wow, there's no difference between me and the tree in the courtyard. And then as we learn the family business, as we learn the rituals and the practices and we become more skillful, in the actualization of our Buddhahood, of our enlightenment, then we get hit with it. Boom. Then it all becomes clear that we've always been enlightened, that we've always been Buddha, that our Buddha nature is our inheritance. It's our treasure. It's something that we have a birthright for. And we didn't have to do anything to earn it. We just had to be ready for it. That's the purpose of the practice. But it's hard to accept our enlightenment. But through the course of the training, we get small glimpses of it. We have interactions with our teacher where we see enlightenment in action. One experience I had, I was sitting a retreat with Bhante Sudaso, who is the abbot of Buddhist Insights in New Jersey. And it was a week-long retreat, and it was difficult. You know, it was cold. I was a little grumpy. And then a family, I have no idea who these people were, but they were clearly friends of the temple. They came and did a food offering, not just for Bhante, but for all of the retreatants. This family, it was a father and mother and their children. They just brought in literally bags of food, and they cooked it up and they fed us, and Bhante did a ceremony to thank them. And I knew what charity was. I knew what it was to give, but to have these complete random strangers just walk in and offer me this delicious food that I had done nothing to earn, I don't even know what their names are. That touched me in a way I cannot put into words. And having that experience was that glimpse. It was that, oh, wow, those people are Buddha. Buddha is feeding me dinner right now. And if they're Buddha, maybe I'm Buddha too. And maybe all these people sitting in this retreat with me are also Buddha. And if human beings, complete strangers, are capable of so much goodness and kindness and selflessness, if they can feed complete strangers, cook up food and give it away for free, what can I do? That's the purpose of the practice, to put us in a mind state, to put us in situations where we can have those experiences and learn not only about our own enlightened nature, but the enlightened nature of other people. This is what the Father did in the story. And this is what the Buddha does for us as his children, his spiritual children. He puts us in positions where we can achieve awakening. And that's why, even though we are already Buddha, we still have to practice Buddhism. And we have to remember that the father in the story did not start out wealthy. He started off poor, so poor that his son ran away. The Buddha also started off poor. He started off unenlightened, unskilled. He was a hedonist. He lived in a palace. He had servants that he may or may not have treated well. He had to go on his own spiritual journey. It took 6 years for him to realize his own enlightened nature, to realize his own Buddhahood. And then after that, he practiced every day for 45 years. The Buddha started off sweeping dung before he learned the family business. And we are doing the same. And I always remind people of that because it's important that we give ourselves a bit of grace, a bit of understanding, that no, we are not perfect Buddhas yet, but we're working on it. No, we cannot sit on the cushion without moving for 2 hours, but we're working on it. Yes, we screw up sometimes during the oryoki meal or during our prostrations, and maybe there are days we forget to practice, but we're still Buddhas, and we're working on it. Actualizing our enlightened nature in everyday life, just like the son in the story did, just like the Buddha himself learned to do. And as we walk the path of the Buddha it is inevitable that one day we will receive our own inheritance and realize that we are Buddhas ourselves. Amitabha. So that's the talk for today. I hope it was helpful. We're now going to move into the Q&A portion of tonight's chat, where you can ask me questions about the reading, about Buddhism in general, or if you just have comments you'd like to share with the rest of the Sangha, something you've experienced in your own practice, or something that touched you this evening, a thought that came into your head, just type those into the chat. And while we're waiting for those to come in, I'll make a few announcements. First off, this is Meditation and Sutra Study. We do it every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you would like to participate, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button. That way you'll be notified when I go live. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, I'd appreciate that as well. It'd be very helpful to me and to the channel, help us get the word out. We also, if Wednesdays aren't good for you, we do Dharma Sunday, which takes place every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, also live streamed on this channel. And that practice consists of a Dharma talk, usually tied to current events, followed by a Q&A. So Anko gave the bow emoji and said, "Namaste, Sensei." Namaste, Anko. Thank you for joining us this evening. I appreciate you being here. Allison Gerfin did the blue heart emoji, followed by a hello. Hello, Allison. Good to see you. Frank Ingiosi did the bow emoji. Thank you, Frank. Allison Gerfin says, "Thank you, wonderful. I really relate to the long time frame, 50 years walking in delusion." We've all been there, Allison. We have all been there. And I know when I first started my training, I had a lot of guilt early on that, if only I'd found Buddhism sooner, if only I'd been born into a Buddhist family. Look at all the time I wasted. But as I started to learn the practice and learn about karma, I realized that my path could not have gone any other way than the way it did. With the information I had, with the people I was around, I kind of knew what Buddhism was, but I really wasn't aware of it until well into my 20s. So even if I wanted to practice Buddhism earlier, I couldn't have. We all get to the practice when we're supposed to get to the practice. And that's related in the story. They say maybe the sun's gone for 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 30 or more years, right? It really doesn't matter when or how we come to the practice. That's what's so beautiful about this. What matters is that we get here. And then we keep trying. So I'm glad you made it, Allison. I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad you're supporting me and others with your presence as we walk this path. The other thing that strikes me about the story, a little bit off topic, but I do like the fact that when the son ran away, they didn't force him to come back. The father initially brought him back, but when the son was terrified, because in those days it wasn't uncommon for wealthy people to have poor people killed or imprisoned, the father said, "Let him go." And then he offered him a job, and then the son came back, but he didn't force him to do anything. And that's an important thing in Buddhism. We don't make people do anything. If you want to come to the temple, that's great. If you don't, we're not going to chase you down. If you want to practice the precepts, that's great. If you don't, it's kind of sad. You're going to suffer more than you need to, but you're still a Buddha. And I really love that we're given that space to do the practice and come to it when we're ready. I think that's important. I think that's important, that everyone walks the path of their free will. And that if they leave, they're allowed to come back. If they leave again, they're allowed to come back again. The door is always open. I especially like a story. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but it reminds me of a story I heard about Amida Buddha and how he stands at the gate to paradise, but he doesn't go in himself. Instead, he leaves it open so that other sentient beings can walk in, saying he won't go into paradise until everyone else has gone before. And that's a greatly summed up in the story. The door is always open to us. We can always practice, no matter when or how we come to the practice. Let's see, David Oliver did the bow emoji. Thanks so much, David. Glad to have you here this evening. And Allison Griffin said, right, if I had been born into a Buddhist family, I probably would have rejected it. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but it's true. It's true. That's always a possibility. I wouldn't say I was a rebellious teenager, but there is that possibility that if you're given something too soon, you don't appreciate it. Just like the son in the story. You know, his father tried to give him his wealth, his inheritance right away, and the son was like, whoa. Right? So then his father used skillful means and eased him into it. And Buddha does the same with us. Excellent point. Good insight. Any other questions or comments for this evening? Okay, well, looks like that's it. So I'll just end by saying thank you so much for joining me for meditation and sutra study. Like I said, we have about 4 weeks of the Lotus Sutra left. Then we'll go on to the Awakening of Faith in the Mahayana Sutra, which is really fantastic. It was written by Avabosa, and he just really lays it out. This is enlightenment. This is how it works. You are a Buddha. This is how you know. Boom, 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 boom. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun with that. But first, we'll finish up having our fun with the Lotus Sutra. So until next time, Amitabha.